Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:07 here on O'Connor and Company on this very busy Monday morning. There's no rest for the weary here at Julie Gunlock. I know there's other radio shows. They're going to phone it in here the last week of the year. It's a holiday. Not us. Bringing our A game, as always. Coming up in 30 minutes, Craig Shirley, presidential historian, Reagan biographer. Look at his reflections on the life and legacy of James Earl Carter, who passed away yesterday. Get to that. It's Julie Gunlock right there. Me, Larry O'Connor. We're back together the way we ought to be, Julie. It's been like, for those keeping score at home,
been a long time.
We have not been on together for like 3 weeks because of our holiday schedules crisscrossing,
right.
But we're back and all fired up, ready to go and reloaded. As 3 weeks from today, Donald Trump will be inaugurated as your 47th president of the United States. And, of course, that means on day one, he will attempt to make good on a lot of his promises, most specifically, first and foremost, to secure that border and begin the process of deporting criminal illegal immigrants in this nation who have been left and welcomed by the Biden administration and left to wreak havoc on many neighborhoods, including right here in our backyard. Joining us now is the sheriff of Frederick County, Maryland, Chuck Jenkins, who has been a national leader in cooperating with ICE law enforcement officials to ensure that immigration laws are not only enforced properly, but that local law enforcement can cooperate with federal law enforcement to make sure that the bad guys are treated like the bad guys that they are, so that innocent people can be protected. I know that seems pretty simple, Sheriff Jenkins, but it still seems controversial in some quarters. Thanks for joining us.
And good morning to you. And why should it be controversial?
I don't know. You know, I don't have an advanced degree in the liberal arts, so I can't tell you that. But tell me in short, first of all, have you had any conversations yet with Tom Homan, with the incoming leadership of the Department of Homeland Security, or with the Trump transition team at all in terms of how you can effectively work and cooperate and get things done starting on day one?
Yeah, no conversation whatsoever, but I have paid close attention to what Mr. Homan's been saying all along with President Trump, along with, I think, Governor Nome, who's going to be the head of Homeland Security. So I can only predict what we'll be able to do to support ICE in their mission, and I'm looking forward to it.
And sheriffs are going to be a big part of this effort here. We've seen these governors and these mayors saying, no, we're not going to cooperate, we're not going to do anything. Sheriffs can sort of transcend a lot of that because of your unique role in a state constitution and in the direct election that you have with the voters of your county.
They certainly can. They had a lot of authority, a lot of autonomy to make decisions to enforce the law outside of the purview of other government officials. I don't report to a county executive. I don't answer to a county council. I don't answer to anybody except the roughly 300,000 people here in the county who basically on election day said, we want to elect President Trump. The mandate is to clean up this country, and they want to be a part of it.
Sheriff, I wanted to ask you about also cooperating or coordinating with areas outside of Frederick County. Part of coordinating with ICE and helping the administration, reach these goals is also cooperating with regional area, the regional law enforcement area. Do you feel like you have that, for instance, from Montgomery County or areas in Virginia that are, frankly, much more to the left than your county and other counties that might want to cooperate? Are you worried about that kind of cooperation if these gangs or if these illegal aliens go from county to county?
Unfortunately, I don't see the cooperation, and I'll say that. How do you square the fact that every law enforcement agency is willing to cooperate with the FBI, the Secret Service, Homeland Security, except when it comes to the deportation of illegals? I don't understand that. Why can't we all come together? Because to me, trying to clean up this country, state by state, county by county, is proactive policing. When you remove the criminals that exist in this country, you get them out of here, you clean up our communities. Those are crimes, mostly a lot of violent crimes that won't be committed. How does it not make sense?
Sheriff Chuck Jenkins is our guest of Frederick County, but during the first Trump administration, you were a national figure. You were often sort of leading the rhetorical efforts there to make a case for local law enforcement cooperating with ICE. And I think that the results spoke for themselves because compared to the neighboring counties in Maryland, Sheriff Jenkins, there was a significant decrease in the criminal activity that we saw elsewhere because you were worried. It just makes, like you said, it makes sense. It makes obvious logical sense.
What the public needs to understand, and political leaders need to understand, is that in terms of illegal immigration, there are several components. There's the border issue. The border has to be secure before we can do anything, day one. Then there's the interior enforcement, which is what I'm a part of, which is what all law enforcement should be a part of, to assist ICE in removing the criminal population from this country, probably pushing 1 million people who have existing deportation warrants, convicted criminals from other countries, criminals convicted here in this country sitting in their jails and prisons that are left go back onto the streets because of the lack of cooperation.
Sheriff, I'd be interested in your assessment of this new Venezuelan gang that is present in the United States, Trinidad Aragua. Sorry if I butchered that name, but they are now active in 18 states. I don't see Maryland listed here, but have you seen their presence? They are called MS-13 on steroids. They're known as one of the most bloodthirsty, violent criminal gangs out there to come over the southern border. What is your assessment of their presence here in the region?
It's very simply extremely brutal, intimidating, probably the most dangerous criminal gang element that exists. Like you said, MS-13 on steroids, and we have allowed them to infiltrate our country, infiltrate the entire United States, probably more than 16 or 18 states. I've heard, and I don't know for sure, they're in Maryland. I don't believe they're in Frederick County, but again, a lot of this you don't know until something happens.
Right.
Again, we have to be proactive. I certainly hope that the President Trump, who I support 1,000%, and Tom Homan 1,000%, declare these criminal gangs as transnational terrorist organizations, which is exactly what they are. I'm extremely concerned.
Sheriff Jenkins, you mentioned the border, and I'd love is sort of the perfect epitaph to the Biden administration's handling, if you want to use that word, of our border security with this final act of attempting to auction off the materials that have been sitting there collecting dust that were originally purchased by the American taxpayer to build the border wall and to secure our border, and now they're trying to auction it off. Now, the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, has now gotten an order to halt that sale, but it speaks volumes about what this administration did.
The bottom line of that stunt, he's screwing the taxpayer, because we're going to repurchase it at whatever cost. If we can't stop the sale, we're going to repurchase, we're going to build the wall, we're going to secure the border. So he's done nothing but a disservice to the taxpayer.
Sheriff Chuck Jenkins, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you have a great New Year. And any message, by the way, for the people of Frederick County as we begin the New Year's festivities, and most specifically about, let's face it, people go out and they, even in Frederick County, they have a drink or two.
Please be safe, and please appreciate the fact that we live in probably the greatest, most safest county in the state of Maryland, what I call the land of pleasant living. So thank you, and you have a great year.
Thank you, Sheriff. It is 8:15. Julie Gunlock, let's get an update here on the mini drama that we all experienced last Thursday and Friday over the H-1B visa question, or on a broader sense, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy making the case for more foreign nationals with technical expertise being allowed into the country to get jobs in the STEM fields that they hold near and dear to their hearts. We didn't get to speak about it, but I was pretty clear in my opinion regarding this. I first of all, I don't understand why we're not putting all of our energy into focusing on illegal immigration, border security, and dealing with that problem first before we open up this additional questions like how can we engineer it so that we can get more foreign nationals in here to take jobs in America. And I understand Musk and Ramaswamy and other big tech gurus are making the case that we need these foreign-born individuals to be able to work here because of their expertise in programming and coding and all that stuff. But I think that I speak for a lot of people my generation, you and I both. We've raised our kids to excel in STEM. Not all kids take to it, but if you prioritize it early on, you can see quickly whether they do take to it, and then they can get degrees and they can poise themselves. We've been told to do this with our kids so that they can be poised to be competitive internationally. So they're graduating with these degrees, and the fact of the matter is their jobs are being taken by foreigners. Their salaries are being undercut by these H-1B visas and by other visas that they put in place so that people get in here, they get a work permit, but they got to work for the company that got them into the country for 5 years without being competitive. It undermines my kids' ability to get a job and be competitive. Why are we even having this debate? We do have an update on it, and I want to give it to you. But, Julie, go again, I'm trying not to be xenophobic and protectionist, but why not hire American kids first?
Yeah, I get that. But look, I'm more sympathetic to this position, to be honest with you. And that is because our education system in this country, and look, your kids are absolutely the exception. But I think, and maybe it's not the rule in this country, but I think there are kids that are in the public school education system that are taught to enter the workforce not in order to get experience and to work hard and to accomplish things, but rather to look for constant grievances. And you and I have to take this DEI training as part of this company, right? We've talked about
like
that
most
on the
companies,
air, and it's awful. And what does that teach? I mean, I watch these videos, and sometimes I'm like, are they trying to get me to see things that aren't there, right? So I think kids K through 12 is a real problem. I am glad that Vivek and Musk have brought this up, have highlighted some abuses of the H-1B program, like when you hire a foreigner to be a dog walker. Okay, I think your perspective is very important. Yeah. We have a generation of kids who are going to lose out. But I really think that we have got to focus on K through 12 education and get back to the basics rather than turning kids into little activists. That's to some degree why businesses hire foreign workers, because they are afraid of these Gen Z gripers who go into a company and again look for problems.
If that's how it was discussed last week and sold to me, I would have understood that, and I was okay. Let's fix that problem. But what was told to me by Vivek Ramaswamy is that there's a cultural problem in this country that isn't producing these kids, and I just think that wasn't a winning message, frankly.
I get it.
If you want to make that case after you've filled all the jobs with the American kids who are graduating and looking to have a good paying job in those fields, that's great. But there are too many of them who aren't getting work, and we hear about the fact that, they're training their replacements who are coming in from foreign countries. It's been exploited, it's been abused. But we have an update here that I think maybe resolves this going forward. I certainly hope it does. Elon Musk put out a statement on social media that is a good way forward. He says, we can fix this by raising the minimum salary and adding yearly costs for maintaining the H-1B visa. So if you're an employer, right now, if you're an employer and you get somebody on an H-1B visa, you're getting a break. You're paying less money, and you're getting a cheaper way to hire somebody versus an American. And he's saying, well, all right, if you want to do that, make it materially more expensive to hire from overseas than domestically. And then you know that employer really is just doing it because it's the most skilled person for that job. Maybe that's a nice way for him to concede part of this argument and discuss it. I think that there needs to be more to this conversation, but it does look like Musk and Ramaswamy both saw that politically this was not the right conversation to have, and in the way that they were having it going forward, at least even before we take office, right? And I just want to say, if you're appointed by Donald Trump, if the president appoints you to a position and you start pontificating on social media and thinking out loud about this stuff, you have to recognize the political ramifications of that.
It isn't exactly make America great again to propose turning your back on young American workers. I get that. I do think that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can look at reforming H-1B, but we also, again, need to look what employers are facing with young activists coming into their companies, looking to create grievance and agitation rather than actually work hard. And so, again, I think we can do both.
Easily solved. During the application process and the hiring process, just make sure you screen and ask who they voted for in the election.
Do you own a MAGA hat?
There you go. Exactly. If you were in support of Kamala Harris, maybe you're going to be trouble on the job, and then we can just make all of that work. Would that be?
It's a great litmus test.
Thank you. It's 8:23. It's 8:37. 30 minutes from now, it'll be the Chris Plant Show. It's Larry O'Connor and Julie Gunlock getting it done here on O'Connor and Company. These final days of 2024. And Julie, we all learned yesterday that at the age of 100, the 39th President of the United States, James Earl Carter, had passed away. It's impossible to say that this was sudden. He's been in hospice for over a year, 100 years old. The last images we saw of him right around Election Day, he obviously was in his final days. And,
yes.
He did pass away, and moments like this require some reflection and some respect, but also some reality with regard to somebody's legacy, especially when they're a public figure and a former president. That's why we're happy to have Craig Shirley here, a presidential historian and an author of many best-selling books about President Ronald Reagan. And Craig, first of all, Happy New Year and Merry Christmas. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you. Happy New Year.
It is kind of impossible to talk about President Carter's presidency and his legacy without mentioning Ronald Reagan, right? I mean, he really did. I mean, the two of them sort of go hand in hand.
Yes, they do. They represent, a different era in American politics, American culture. For 17 years, from the time of JFK's assassination till 1980, we went through Watergate, we went through gas lines, we went through Vietnam, we went through the assassinations of RFK and Martin Luther King Jr., and it was really, those 17 years were a terrible time, including the Carter presidency. We had high inflation, we had Iranian hostages, we had long gas lines, we had Soviets invading Afghanistan. It was really a bad time for the United States, and Ronald Reagan's election signaled a new era, a new way of looking at the world, a new way of looking at the economy, a new way of looking at life and the government, and it really ushered in a whole new era and left Carter behind. That doesn't mean that Carter. I don't want to be harsh here. Like the ancient Greeks said, nisi bonum, which is don't speak ill of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be. His presidency was uneven. That's the way I can put it charitably. But he did have some good achievements. He did introduce human rights, which hadn't been introduced before, to the international foreign policy debate, and he did produce the highly durable Camp David Accords.
And listen, I don't think it's speaking ill of the dead about Jimmy Carter as a person to focus an uncritical eye, or a critical eye, I should say, on his policies and his achievements or lack thereof.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Is that he was a superb individual. He's a Christian. He was devout in his faith. He was uncorruptible. He made mistakes as president. He had failures as president, but he had a superb post-presidency with building homes for the poor and with charitable works and traveling the world for peace and writing books and winning the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, he had a standard by which all other presidents should follow.
Well, I don't know if I totally agree with that. He had 18 years to reread his 2006 book, Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid.
Yeah.
And to revisit his position on Israel, and he didn't. And I think that what he did there, peace, not apartheid, suggesting Israel as an apartheid state, really harmed the Middle East, and it has led to some degree to what we see from the activists today. What are your feelings on his position on Israel and that book that he wrote?
I think he had mixed feelings about Israel. I remember in the 80 campaign, he was accused of being Arabist, and he was harsh on Israel, no doubt about it. With the Camp David Accords, he made them give up the conquered lands they won from Egypt in the 1967 war. And there was a lot of people who thought, in fact, that was a real problem in the 80 campaign, his problem with the American Jewish vote and how many Jewish leaders were supporting Ronald Reagan because they perceived him as being stronger on the issue of Israel than Carter was. There's no doubt about that was a problem, that he had a somewhat blind eye toward Israel, that he had a problem with Israel, and that followed through.
Yeah. Mainstreaming and legitimizing the notion that the state of Israel was equivocal to apartheid, I think, was incredibly damaging. And it's frankly, I think the Democrats, and they're still holding on to that messaging today.
I can't believe that I'm defending Jimmy Carter.
Well, it's funny. No, I get that.
I know, because I'm a conservative, but I don't want to judge harshly for one thing. It was a very, very bad thing for him to say about Israel. very pro-Israel, very pro
Right.
Bush state. And that bothers me a lot. On the other hand, is that in the whole context of this 100 years, I don't think we can judge him based on that one thing.
I agree. I hear that. I
you have
do.
to take the whole totality of the man.
And
the whole totality of it.
Listen, as a graduate of the Naval Academy and the only Naval Academy graduate to become President of the United States, obviously I'm a big fan of that institution, and so there's always going to be that. But I got to say, it's funny. Craig Shirley is our guest, who is a author of multiple best-selling biographies of President Reagan. We are affording, as conservative Republicans, Craig Shirley, and as fans of Ronald Reagan, big-time fans of Ronald Reagan, we are affording Jimmy Carter respect and deference that Lord knows he and other Democrats and liberals in the media did not afford President Reagan when he passed away, which I think is rather ironic because, boy, they didn't hesitate to wring their hands and sort of bend over backwards and try to be respectful. They were horrible to Reagan after he died. Oh, did we lose Craig? Oh, we sure did, and we were worried that we would lose his. Well, trust me on that. Craig would have agreed with me. Oh, there he is. Go ahead, Craig.
I wrote a book on Reagan's post-presidency and how the left eviscerated him.
Yes.
Even in the week of his passing, they eviscerated Reagan. Reagan, his legacy, Reagan personally. They said the most mean, awful, terrible things about his capacity, his mental acuity, his ability, the success or failure of his presidency. They said terrible things about him. I don't think we should do likewise. I don't think Carter made mistakes, and in the fullness of time, when the ground is cooled and we judge him, he will, with a clear eye, we will judge him to be that he was an honest, decent, moral man, but he was a failed president. But he was a very good post-president.
Craig Shirley, thank you so much for joining us. By the way, we're doing a whole lot of year-end reviews, and I'm seeing a lot of lists. The biopic of Reagan, which, of course, not read Craig Shirley's books if you really want the Reagan story. But I thought it was well done. I thought it was a good depiction.
It was very well. There's a good reason why it was well done, because I was the historical advisor on that movie.
I didn't know that. I didn't even see your name in the credits. Well, well done, you, Craig.
I'm in the credits.
And let me tell you, it is making a lot of top 10 lists for popularity streaming. It's done very well in its streaming life. It did very well at the box office, for that matter. Made some money, and it's gotten pretty good ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a good movie.
Yes.
So,
but it's a great schism between the elites who trashed it and the everyday, common sense Americans who loved it.
Of course.
That speaks to the schism that we have in America today, more pronounced than at any other time in our lives.
Amen, brother. Thank you, Craig. Always great to talk with you. Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year, Larry. Thank you.
8:45.
WMAL, making sense of education, because what's happening in your kid's school matters. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
As we reflect on the passing of Jimmy Carter and his failed presidency, we can't help but notice that another presidency is exiting stage extreme left, and it was also a failed presidency. Joe Biden is on his way out, but not without a whimper, and we're seeing a lot of post-mortem discussions of his presidency and a lot of rewriting of history, a lot of spinning that would make a figure skater jealous. And this is my favorite so far, Julie. Are you ready? Jake Sullivan.
Ready.
Jake Sullivan is the National Security Advisor for President Biden, right? And what's the most famous thing about Jake Sullivan? That weeks before October 7th, he was in China bragging about how safe, secure, and peaceful everything in the Middle East was. And it was all because of him and all because of Joe Biden's great leadership, right? National security has been an absolute abject failure across the board in every possible way, whether it's Eastern Europe and Russia and Ukraine, or whether it's the Middle East with Iran and the various terror puppet groups that Iran manages to kill our allies and kill Americans and take them hostage, to you name it. Communist China, the Pacific, everything, all of it, right? And here's Jake Sullivan in the Washington Post yesterday. I'm going to quote him now. Are you ready? The president has been operating on a time horizon measured in decades, while the political cycle is measured in 4 years. So you people don't appreciate the greatness of Joe Biden's vision right now because it'll take decades for us all to see the fruits of the great decisions that he's made. Sullivan added that Biden's accomplishments, by their nature, will take a long time to bear fruit. How to govern at this moment to set the U.S. up for long-term success has one answer, and how to govern to deal with midterm and presidential elections in the short term might have a different answer. The president went with doing the things that really put America in a strong position, even though you morons out there in the country, when you went to the election day, you didn't get it. You'll never quite understand how great Joe Biden really was.
That's right. That's right.
Isn't
Larry.
that beautiful?
We just need time.
Honestly, I'm trying to figure this out. I always like to put myself in the other person's position and understand what their argument is, usually just so I can better defeat their argument. I don't get this one.
I don't either.
How do you look at the Middle East? How do you look at Israel? How do you look at Iran and what happened there and think to yourself, yeah, it may look bad today, but, 20 years from now.
In 20 years, are we going to think
thanking
October
Joe
7th
Biden.
wasn't just as bad? In fact, we'll probably know more about what happened and the planning that went into it. And the Americans, taxpayer, not unknowingly paying for it, will probably know more. How could you? Abbey Gate.
Exactly.
Abby Gate, the
Yeah,
withdrawal
how about
from
the
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan
How
withdrawal?
about you guys apologize? I'm still waiting for someone to get fired.
Oh, it's just everything about this is quintessential Biden and quintessential Jake Sullivan. And here's the thing: Jake Sullivan will get a multi-million-dollar book deal.
Oh.
Jake Sullivan will get a chair at American Enterprise Institute.
Absolutely,
or
he'll be in Brookings Institute. Yeah, American Enterprise Institute. I mean, these people will do nothing but win. And look, the winners write the history, right? I mean, who's on their side, Larry? The media.
Right.
The media.
Well,
they know that this is how you get these overly confident people.
The old media, the corporate media,
yes.
the legacy media, the propaganda media,
the dying media,
the media that lost this election and continue to lose on a daily basis because we, the American people, have alternatives now, and we're utilizing those alternatives. So you're right. The media will write their stories, but we will write the truth. And that's why I look forward to you all buying my book, Shameless Liars, about the media's war against the Trump campaign in 2024. It'll be available
Is this
in
the first time
4
you've
weeks.
talked about this?
I mentioned it briefly last week, but you weren't listening.
This is very exciting.
4 weeks. It's published 4 weeks from tomorrow. Get ready for it.
Gosh.
Available today on Kindle, $8.53.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.